This is Gemara in Kesubos, a Daf, a Kuf, a Gimel, a Gut Tevach, a Gut in Zimmer. Apologies on the lateness of the Ishurim. We did not manage to get them up before Yom Tov, but B'siyata Dishmaya, I hope everyone was a Mekabel L'Torah B'Simcha, and B'siyata Dishmaya, we should all get back on track and catch up with the Daf. So let's pick it up on the bottom of Kuf Beis and Beis, 5 lines from the bottom. It says the Gemara, Lo Yoimar Harishon. The first one cannot say, we're discussing over here the two different sets of children, that when she comes to me, I'll feed her. Rather, they both obligated, or I should say the two husbands, they both obligated themselves to feed her for 5 years, and therefore they have to feed her and bring the food wherever she is. Amar Rav Chisda, Zoyse Meres, Bas Eitzel Ima. Says Rav Chisda, you know, we learn from over here, from this Gemara, from this Mishnah, I should say, hidden in these words, we learn an incredible rule, says Rav Chisda. We learn that the place of the Bas is Eitzel Ima. And that's the reason why that the Yarshim are not able to demand that she comes to them, but rather, she's allowed to stay with her mother. Ask the Gemara, how do you know that we're dealing with a Gedayla? Maybe we're dealing with a Ketana. And maybe the reason is that we allow the girl to stay with her mother is only because of a particular story. Someone died and left over a young son, to his mother. The inheritors of the father said, let him grow up with us. And the mother says, no, I want my son growing up with me. So what do? We left the boy with his mother. And we should not leave him next to those who are unfit to inherit him. He's the inheritor of his father. So we don't leave him by the other Yarshim, but rather he stays with his mother. And says the Gemara, there was a story that the boy was allowed to be taken care of by those who are fit to inherit him. And in order for the fact that they wanted to inherit him quicker, Rahman al-Islam, they were shachat, they shechted him, they killed him. And therefore we see that we're not going to trust them for the child to live there. So ask the Gemara, how do you see from our Mishnah that we're dealing with a Gedayla? And we have a Raya that the place of the girl is by her mother. No, maybe we're dealing with a Ketana. And the only reason why she is going with the mother is because of this story, this terrible story that one time the child went next to those who were inheriting him, and there was a terrible ending. Erev Arishain, Ayin Reishay is Erev Arishain. At the first night of the child's stay, they killed him. Answers the Gemara, Imkein Listi Makaim Shehi. If it was true that there was a difference between a Gedayla and a Ketana, the Mishnah should have differentiated that the husband brings the child the food in the place that she is. And as we turn over to today's daf of Kuf Gimel and Alpha, says the Gemara, why did the Mishnah list it and say that the place that they feed this girl, feed the child, is in the place of her mother? From the wording, not necessarily from the context of the Mishnah, but from the wording of the Mishnah, it doesn't say simply that she stays next to the that she's fed wherever she is, and rather from the fact that the Mishnah said that she's fed l'makom she'ima next to her mother. From there, we have a clear proof, says the Gemara, that Abbas Eitzel, that the place of the daughter is next to her mother. We continue 2 lines from the top. Says the Gemara, Lo yamru shneim. They both cannot say, the two husbands, they can't push off feeding this girl. Says the Gemara, Ho gavra daigla richay lechavrei. Excuse me. Ho gavra. Ho gavra. One more time. Ho gavra daigla richay lechavrei letchina. There was a certain person that rented out a rechaya, a mill, to his friend to mill, and how was the person going to pay for the renting of this mill. He didn't decide that he's going to pay him money per month, cash per month, but rather he's going to allow the owner, he's going to mill his grain in the way that I'm going. Let's say, for example, I am renting your mill. Instead of giving you $100 a month, the agreement that we make is, what I'm going to do is, L'tchina, I'm going to grind up, I'm going to mill your grain as payment for you giving me the mill. L'saif, in the end, yatar. What happened in the end? What happened is, the owner turned wealthy, and Zavin, Rechaya, Vechamra. And he bought his own. And therefore, meaning I now have my own mill, and I have my own donkey to ride the mill and to work the mill. And therefore, I don't need you, the renter, to grind up my wheat anymore. So So he says to him, he says to the renter, until now, you ground up my grain, and that's the way you paid for the rental of the mill. But now, Havli Igra, pay me cash. I don't need you to do what you're doing anymore. I want you to pay me. Amar Le, the renter said, Mitchan Techinalach. So now we have a fight between the two parties, whether I can obligate the renter to pay me the cash, or he could say, no, the agreement was that I keep on grinding your grain, and I'm not paying you. Amar Le, Mitchan Techinalach. So Ravina thought that we have a precedent for this case. Is our Mishnah? What did our Mishnah say? The Mishnah cannot say that the two husbands, the two fathers cannot say we're going to support the children as one. Ella, Echad, Zana. We're talking about the stepdaughter that each obligated themselves to pay for 5 years. One supports her. So even though the original agreement when they got married was that they're going to have to pay her for 5 years, we see over here that we do what makes sense at the end of the day. One gives her food and one gives her cash. So too over here, since the owner no longer has any need for him to grind up his grain, the answer should be that now we have to give him cash. Amar le Rav Avira mi dami. What's the comparison? Hasam chad krisa isla. Over there, in the case of the Mishnah, there's only one stomach, so to give her 2 times food is pointless. Tarti krisa lasla. She doesn't have 2 stomachs. Hachi matzi amar le tchayin v'zavin tchayin v'aisif. But over here, he can say, no, I want to keep on grinding your stuff. You now have your own way of grinding your own stuff. Fine, so sell that. But there's no inherent issue with having extra grain in the Mishnah. What's the person going to do? But over here there is. Says the Gemara, this we only can say this where he doesn't have, the renter can only refuse to pay him cash when he doesn't have enough grain for the full-time running of the mill for himself. Because then he has extra time, he has an hour, and he wants to use that to grind up the grain of the owner. And then he can say, that's what I want to do. But if he's really running his mill full time, and therefore there's no reason why he's denying his request of paying him cash, then we force him to do it. And this is a case of kaifin lav al midas time. We force someone not to have bad midas. Says the Mishnah, Almana Shamra. Says the Mishnah, we have a case. We have an Almana, and we want to know her right to get mizaynais, her right to get a place to live from her deceased husband's estate. So a woman's husband dies, and she says, I can't leave my husband's house. This is where I want to live. The Yarshim can't say to her, go to your father's house, we'll feed you over there. Rather, they have to feed her, and they have to give her a dwelling according to her status. If she says, yeah, if she loves him, let's say the opposite case. Let's say she says, I can't leave my father's house. Then the Yarshim can tell her, if you come next to us, we'll feed you. Says the Mishnah, concluding case number 3, if she says that since she is young, and the Yarshim Vehin Yaladim, and the other Yarshim are also young, and therefore she's nervous to live in the same location as them, as they might take advantage of her. Then they have to feed her while she is in her father's house. And as you can tell from the size of this Gemara, we're about to hit a bit of a Gadata, so let's get moving. But before we get there, says the Gemara, Tanu Rabban Mishtameshes b'modar kavay kederech shamsheres v'chayi baylo. They have to give her a dwelling, a lodging, just like she got in the lifetime of her husband. Ba'avadim ushvachos kederech shamsheres v'chayi baylo. We've seen a similar Gemaras when it comes to giving tzedakah, that we're obligated to give someone tzedakah the way that they are accustomed to living. Similarly, we see over here, says the Gemara, that this woman, she gets the way that she was accustomed to living. She gets the same type of house, the same types of servants, the same pillows and blankets. But if she's used to eating on the finest china, the golden and silver goblets, says the Gemara, why? Because this is what every husband writes his wife in Kesubos. You'll sit in my house, and you're going to be supported from all the days of your widowhood in my house. And Tani Rav Yosef, from here we learn out that he says, I'm going to feed you in my house and not in my hut. And therefore the Yarshim are obligated to continue feeding the Almana, supporting her, and treating her the same way that she was used to be treating while she was married. Amar Rav Nachman. We're 7 lines into the wide lines. First word of the line is Bibikas. Yisaim Shamachru Mother Almana. Yisaimim, Shamachru, yeah, I said it right the first time. Yisaimim Shamachru Mother Almana. If the Yisaimim sold the house, then Lo Yasa V'Lo Klum. They can't sell the house. This is where she's living. What are the Yisaimim thinking? They can just go and sell this Almana's husband's house? No, this is her house. She has raised it. They cannot sell it. Asks the Gemara, if the Yisayim jumped early and sold small properties, that which they sold. So it's true that the daughters have the right, but we see that the sale takes effect. So ask the Gemara, why you, Rav Nachman, are you saying any different? Answers the Gemara, says the Gemara, is a fundamental difference. Over here, the actual house is mishubad in the husband's lifetime, and therefore the Yarshim cannot make a sale on that property. About 12 lines down, the first one line is mechayim. Naktinan, we have a tradition which usually means halach l'moshim Sinai mother amana shenafla ein hayarshich chayv l'benaisa. If the house falls, if the deceased husband's estate collapses, the inheritors, the Yarshim, are not obligated to rebuild it. Tanami hachi, we're the same in the Braisa. Mother amana shenafla ein hayarshich chayv l'benaisa. V'lo yoid. Not only that, says the Braisa. She says, leave it, and I'm going to rebuild it. Ein shaymin law. They do not have to listen to her. And Bayi Abaya, Shiv Samai, says Abaya, what is the halacha if the Almana repaired Shipsa, from the word of Shiputzim, she repaired the house before it collapsed? Is she then allowed to stay there? Or do we say that if she would not have repaired it, the house would have fallen? Says the Gemara, Teku, we got to wait for Eliyahu Navi for that answer. We're about 15 lines down, we're at the 2 dots. Amra E Efshi. If she says, I can't leave my father's house, then the Yarshim could tell her, listen, you come live with us, we'll feed you, if not. Ask the Gemara, ask her, I don't understand. Why don't the Yarshim have to give her while she's living at her father's house? And from here, says the Gemara, you know why? Because the bracha of a house is due to its numbers. So the Yarshim could say, you want to be fed and supported from the estate, no problem. But you have to come, because the estate will only have enough money to feed you if you live here. That the house will have more bracha if there are more people in the house. Ask the Gemara further, let's make a calculation. And whatever amount the house increased, we should give it. Hachanami, says Gemara, that's true, that much you do have to give her, but you just don't have to give her the full amount. Amar Rav Huna Loshe Chachamim Bracha. Says Rav Huna, we learn that number one, the wording of the Chachamim is a bracha. The Gemara is going to explain this. And now the Gemara explains. Bracha, Hada Amarin, that from the words of Chazal, we learn bracha. We learn that from the halacha that they do not have to feed this woman if she doesn't want to move into their house. We see this incredible segula, we can call it, that the more people in a household, the more bracha is going to be. Oisher, from the word of the Chachamim, we learn wealth. Tanan, a different Mishnah. If someone does the Meshicha, he pulls the fruit, but he did not measure it, he acquires it. But if he measured it, but he did not pull it, and if he's smart, he should rent the place. And by renting the area that the fruit is sitting in, he will acquire the ground underneath it, and thereby acquire and make a kinyan on the fruit of the well as well. So over here, really, what's this Mishnah teaching us? Teaching us a regular monetary halacha about fruit, but as well, it's giving us a little bit of a piece of advice when it comes to buying and selling. You want to make sure the person doesn't back out of the sale. Now we see what you have to do. Either you have to make a kinyan meshicha, you have to pull the item, or Chazal, Lo Shecham Aisha teaches us wealth, that what? You could rent the area underneath. And finally, Merapeh, the words of Chacham teach you healing. You cannot chew up weed and put it on your wound on Pesach. Why not? Because it could turn chametz. So number one, the halachas is teaching us chametz, but also teaches us medical advice. It teaches us the way to heal wounds is by chewing up the grain and putting it on top of the wound. Tanu Rabbanon, says the Gemara B'Shas tells Rabbi Amar Lebani Ani Tzarich, as Rabbi, the Heliga Rabbi Rabbeinu HaKadosh, when he was leaving this world, he called out, Ani my son, Nechlasu Banav Etzel, his children entered, Amar Lehem Yisrael B'Chvodim Ha'achem. Number one, the Gemara is going to delve into each one of these items. Be careful to honor your mother. Number two, a candle should always be lit in my place. The table should be set in my place. My bed should be made. And finally, after telling them how they should keep the house in a certain order, a certain table set and the candle lit, etc., he said, these two children, Yosef Chafni and Shimon Efrasi, they served me in my life, they should serve me after my death. So says the Gemara, let's go one by one. Be careful to honor your mother. He asked the Gemara, I don't understand. 15 lines from the bottom, first one is Imachem. Ask the Gemara, I don't get it. What is he telling his children? It's a din daraisa. Answers the Gemara, Ishes Av Havoi. No, it wasn't their real mother. It was his Rebbe's wife, which is not the children's real mother, and therefore he had to tell them to honor. Ask the Gemara further, Ishes Av Nami daraisa. That's also daraisa. The time going to the raisa. Kabbalah is Vicha Vasimecha. S. Avicha zu Ishes Avicha Vasimecha zu Bali Mecha is the husband. Vav Yisrael Rabbi Agadol. The Vav adds on a brother, the older brother, you have to honor din daraisa. But we see that one's father's wife, he has to honor on a daraisa level. So why did Rebbe have to tell the children to honor their mother? Answers the Gemara, there's no din daraisa. So Rebbe had to warn them to honor their mother or his wife. What's the reason that Rebbe needed all these things? Explained the Gemara. Every Friday night, what would happen in the house of Rebbe? Rebbe was nifter, but every Friday night he would come home somehow, whatever this means exactly. Therefore, he wanted the table set for himself. One Friday night, a neighbor came and yelled out, Amra, Hamasei, Shetika to Rebbe Yosef. The maidservant said, be quiet. Rebbe's inside. Rebbe was nifter. Kiva Yosef, Kiva the Shama. Once Rebbe heard that people know that he's coming back to this world, even after he was nifter, Shavla Asi, he didn't come anymore. Shaloti Las Tzadikim Arishonim, not so people shouldn't talk on the early Tzadikim that they did not come back after they were nifter. Yosef Chavnei Shimon Efrasim Shishun B'chaim Shishun B'maisi Savar Mina B'Hadin Almahu Dekamar. Says the Gemara, the people understood from this. The Rebbe was saying that these children should be the one that bury him. They should occupy themselves in this world. Give the Chazir the Kamar, I say. But says the Gemara, once they saw that their Aroinais were before his, that these children were buried before Rebbe, Amri Shmamina who Amu the Kamari Rabbi was talking about in the next world. But Haida Amr Achiv Lo Lemri Milsa Have Lahu Vadina Nami Zachus Vada Inna Nami's Chusa de Rabbi Abba Avuahu Dahani Lahu. And the reason why Rabbi said this was that people will not say that you know why these two people died? Because they did an Aveira of some sort. And therefore, and it was only Rabbi's Suchosim that kept them alive. Excuse me, these weren't his children. There were two Talmidim that served him, and therefore Rabbi said that they are going to serve him. Lost in lovely. Amr Lehen, Rabbi said to his children, the Chachmi Yisrael ani tzarich, ani the Chachamim, nechzos the Chachmi Yisrael, Amr Lehen, he told the Chachamim, al tisbadunu ba'ayarais, do not say Espedim for me in the big cities. And furthermore, as we turn over to Kav Gimel and Beis, and go back to learn after 30 days. Shimon Bini, this is where I made a mistake, excuse me, this is where he's talking about his children. Chacham, Gamliel Bini Nasi, Chanina Bar Chama, Yasha Barash. Al Tisduni Bayaris, 3 lines down, Kav Gimel and Beis, let's understand exactly where Rabbi told the Chacham, they should not say Espedim in the cities. Savar Mina, the Gemara thinks, Misham Dercho. You know the reason why they should not say Espedim? It's because the Dercha, it's a bother. But then once they saw that they were giving Rabbi Espedim Bikrachim in the cities, and everyone was coming to the cities for the Espedim, that the reason why Rabbi wanted them to make the Espedim in this manner was to give more honor to Kavod HaTorah, to Kamar Shiva Yeshiva, to Ikaru, excuse me. To Kamar Shiva Yeshiva Achar Shashim Yayim. That which Rabbi said they should go back to learning after 30 days. All different Moshe Rabbeinu. Because he's not greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. Dachsaviv Kubenei Sals Moshe Baravas Barvas Maiv Shashim Yayim. Salastin Yayimim Saftin Biyamama Valelia. For 30 days. Incredible. He said Espedim for 30 days straight for Rabbeinu HaKadosh, both by day and by night. Mikan ve'ilach safta b'imama v'garis b'leila. Afterwards, they gave Espedim by day and they learned at night. Or safta b'leila v'garis b'imama. Or they said Espedim by night and they learned by day. Ad the safta tzviz yarech chishata. This went on for 12 months. Hoyom de'eshkafta the Rabbi nafka ba'as kol va'amra kol the havi b'shvuza the Rabbi mizum l'chelim haba. The day the Rabbi was nifter, you know what happened? There was a heavenly voice that came out that anyone who was there at the death when Rabbi was nifter is going straight to Olam Haba. Who kaivis? There was a certain laundry man called Yom Avi Asli Kamei. Every day, this laundry man would come in front of Rabbi. Ahu Yaima, but on that fateful day, the Rabbi was nifter lo Asli, didn't come. Kim the Shama Achi, when he heard this, and he said, "Oy vey, I missed out. I'm not going to Olam Haba." Salik le'igra. He went up to the roof, and Nafal Ara, and he fell to the ground. He, at some level, committed suicide. Mason, he died. Obviously, he wasn't suicide from the fact that the Gemara says, this laundry man is also going to Olam Haba. Exactly how to understand this. It sounds that he was suicidal. Obviously, it means something else. It was from the deep pain that he wasn't there at the time of the Petira of Rabbi. Continues the Gemara 5 lines into the medium-sized line. Shimon b'ni Chacham. Rabbi told the Chachamim that Shimon, my son, is a Chacham. I Kamer. What does that mean? Achi Kamer explains the Gemara. Shimon b'ni Chacham. Even though Shimon, my son, is a Chacham, Gamliel b'ni Nasi. Amar Levi Srichel Meimar. Levi says, "What did he really need to say this? That Gamliel is going to be the Nasi?" Amar Shimon bar Rabbi Srichel Chalim Atzalasach. Yes, he needed to say this, and he needs your lameness as well. Says the Gemara. What's going on over here? My Kashalei. What's the question? Hakar. There's a pasuk that says, "V'samlacha nasali yuhayrim." The pasuk says that the malacha should be given over to Yahiram. Ki hu bachar. So we see clearly that what happens that the bachar takes over. So why did Rav Shimon bar Rabbi say that without the fact that Rabbi said it, Gamliel would not have been the Nasi? Gamliel was the bachar, so he takes over for his father Rabbi. Answers the Gemara: if you're filling the place of your father, that's when it's clear that you get to take over. But for Gamliel, did not take over all the other duties of his father, therefore was not pashit. Why did Rabbi do this? Rav Gamliel, the child of Rabbi, might not have been as great as Rabbi in Chachma, but he was as great as him in Yiras Chet, and that's the reason why he took over. Chanina bar Chama, Yashe Barosh, Chanina bar Chama, should be at the head of the yeshiva. Lo kibler Rav Chanina, Shayir Rav Afis Kalumanu. Says the Gemara, Rav Chanina did not accept the position of Rosh Hashiva, because Rav Afis was greater than him. Shteishanu Mefsel for 2.5 years, Yasser Rav Abba Bereishas. Rav Afis was the Rosh Hashiva. Yasser Rav Chanina Abrayin. Rav Chanina would sit outside the Beis Medrash, because he couldn't be inside, because he was really greater than Rav Afis. But Rav Afis was older than him. Also, Levi Yosef Gabe, and Levi came and he would learn outside the base medrash with him. Nachman Sheder Rav Afis, after 2.5 years, Rav Afis was nifter. Yosef Rav Chanina Bereishim, Rav Chanina took over the yeshiva. Now Levi had no one to learn with. Because of Bavel, so why Levi didn't go in and learn under Chanina Bar Chama's discussion, but because that Levi went to Bavel. That's what they told Rav. That's what they told Rav. There's a great person that's coming to Nahardai, referring to Levi, says the Gemara, and he's a matla, he's limping, Vidarish Klila Shari, and he taught that wearing a Klila, we learned this in Gemara in Shabbos, a type of crown, a type of tiara is allowed on Shabbos. So Rav understood that this is Levi, Shari is allowed. Amar says, Rav, Shmami na Nachman Shed Rav Afis. I know the Rav Afis must have been nifter. V'yasser Chanina Bereisha, and Rav Chanina took over the yeshiva. So Levi did not have a chavrusa v'kasi, and therefore he came to Bavel. Asked the Gemara, how did Rav know that? Maybe Rav Chanina was nifter. Rav Afis kid Yosef. Maybe Rav Afis is still Rosh Hashiva, and Levi still had no one to learn with because he was learning with Chanina outside the base medrash. So maybe Rav Chanina was nifter, and that's why he came to Bavel. Answers the Gemara, maybe if that would have happened, Levi would have went inside and became a Talmud of Rav Afis. Since Rebbe said that Chanina Bar Chama should sit at the head of the yeshiva, lo sagid lo malach, Rav knew that, of course, the words of Rebbe were going to come to fruition, and therefore he for sure was going to become Rosh Yeshiva. The Kesubos Tzadikim says about Tzadikim, it takes our Omer v'yakam lach, that the word is fulfilled. Asks the Gemara 1 second, but what about Rav Chia? Why didn't Rav Chia become Rosh Yeshiva? Why was Rav Chanina appointed to be Rosh Yeshiva? Nachnav Shei says he had already nifter. How could that be? We know in a Raisa, Rav Chia said, I saw the cover of Rabbi. So that means that Rav Chia was obviously nifter after Rabbi. Farad to love Demais, Epoch, so you have to switch around the names. Rav Chia, Rabbi, Bali Kedusha, Epoch, switch the names. Rabbi Nicholas Rav Chia, Tzlaya found him crying, Rabbi, I know you're being nifter, but why are you crying? We learned in a Raisa, where 7 lines from the white lines, if someone dies from laughter, it's a good simon. So Rabbi, why are you crying? Parav lamala, if his face is up, is simin yafaloi. Parav lamata, simin raloi. Parav klabe am, he's facing the people, simin yafaloi. It's a good sign for him. Klabe akaisel, simin raloi. When they yirakim, if he dies from drunkenness, simin raloi. When they sahivim, ha'adaimim, simin yafaloi. Meis be'erev Shabbos, yav simin yafaloi. Something that we've heard many times at Levias of Gedalit being nifter on Erev Shabbos. But my Shai Shabbos, simin raloi. Meis be'erev Yom Kippurim, simin raloi. My Soy Yom Kippurim, simin yafaloi. Meis be'chol me'ayim, simin yafaloi. From stomach problem, neisha rubishal thing b'zad b'chol me'ayim. So I asked the Gemara, Rabbi, why are you crying right before you're nifty? You should be laughing. That's the simin yafaloi. So Amar Lei. So Rabbi responded, no, mi taira atura mitzvahs kabachina. No, I'm crying. I'm crying because I'm not able to learn any more taira and do any more mitzvahs. So but what do we see in this whole long brisa? We see that Rabbi died before Rav Chia. So answers the Gemara, Ibai Yisem Epoch, switch around the names. Ibai Yisem Leilam Atevach, don't switch it around. Rav Chia also give mitzvahs havai and explains the Gemara. Don't switch around the names, but Rav Chia was always doing mitzvahs, and therefore Rabbi Savar loy afgrace. Rabbi didn't appoint him as Rosh Hashiva because he didn't think that he'd be able to be a proper Rosh Hashiva as he was busy doing mitzvahs. Rav Chia, and we see this from the fact that when Rav Chanina and Rav Chia were fighting over something, Amar Lei, Rav Chanina Rav Chia, Bahadi mitzvahs, you're fighting with me. I'm so great. If Torah would be forgotten, I'd be able to bring pilpul Torah to bring it back. Rav Chia, no, Avdi. Said Rav Chia, what do you mean? I make sure that the Torah is not forgotten. The truth is, we're going to stop over here. The Gemara is now going to get into a lengthy discussion how Rav Chia would do a very unique process that we'll talk about tomorrow, planting the flax and the deer and the hides and teaching Torah in order that Torah is not forgotten. Mirza Hashem will pick up from here in the next year.